Welcome back. Gary from Refinish Media. As always, David's behind the camera. This is our 10th video ever. We never thought we would make it this far, so thanks for all the support. This is a special video. If you watch the end of this video, we have our very first giveaway ever. DeVilbiss gave us a gun kit, and we're going to give it away to our subscribers. So if you watch the end of this video, it'll tell you how to enter the raffle to win this gun for free. In this episode, we're going to go over some of the comments. We get a lot of questions to explain this or what about that. So we're actually going to go through and read some of the comments that you had and hopefully give a better explanation of what's going on. Most of these comments came from the Marc Cartier DeVilbiss interview or one of the two videos that are out on the Jeff Matoush video. So most of these videos are going to be paint related. So the first question is what is 2K primer? Can you please explain that? So unfortunately, on the internet, a lot of people misuse the term 2K primer. I think a lot of people on the internet think 2K primer is a high build urethane primer. That's not technically true. 2K stands for two component. I know here in America, we spell component with a C. I like to say it's Euro talk trash. I believe it's German, but 2K means it just has a catalyst. All of the products that I'm using, be it my clear coat, be it my sealer, be it my epoxy primer or my etch, my urethane primer, my polyester primer, or what have you, are technically all 2K primers. So that is a term that's very, very misused on the internet. 2K primer just means two component, meaning it has a hardener or a catalyst in it. If you add primer, a hardener, and reducer, that doesn't make it 3K. If it's like a base coat that has base and reducer with no catalyst, that's 1K. Spray paint is 1K. If it has a catalyst or hardener, some people call it an activator, that's a 2K. So that's the big difference. What is DTM? DTM is direct to metal. I got a love-hate with DTM. Most DTM primers are misused. And what I mean by that is I use a product that's called Slick Sand. It's made by Evercoat. It is a polyester high-fill primer. I like it. It is technically a DTM primer. Here's the problem with it. I would not spray it over bare metal. But wait. The technical data sheet says it's designed to go on. It will stick to bare metal. It should not, in my opinion, be applied on bare metal. I would put a bare metal primer first. I lean towards epoxy, especially with a polyester. You don't want a 2K or 1K acid etch underneath that polyester. But I don't spray polyester or all DTMs directly to metal, even though technically they would stick. We're using 2K epoxies for bare metal. There are some DTM products like VP 2050 by PPG that is a 2K primer that could go over bare metal because it's an epoxy. I would still rather put a true bare metal epoxy underneath that bad boy and maybe some metal conversion coatings underneath it if we're talking about the ultimate protection. So hopefully that clears up those questions. The next question is urethane versus poly versus epoxy, and what do you mean by shrinking? All right, all 2K products shrink. Technically, if it's a liquid, 1K product will shrink. They do it two different ways. I don't call them technical data sheets or TDSs like most of you guys do. I'm a PPG user. David uses BASF. I call them P sheets. So it's tomato, but just so we're on the same page. Is on the P sheets or the TDS sheets, if you go to the last page, it will say solid content by weight or volume, and let's say that it says 50%. And it will, on most products, say weight and volume. Volume is how much mass or area it takes up, and weight is how much it weighs. The product usually, if I spray a clear or a primer, it usually is dry that day or the next day, but it might take 30 days to cure. Some products you can cure faster, some take slower. We'll just say 30 days just for a nice round number. After that product is fully cured, how much volume did it lose or how much weight? If I took a mixing cup and I filled up 400 milliliters and my product had a 50% shrinkage by volume, and I looked at it 30 days later, instead of being at the 400 milliliter line, it should be at the 200 milliliter line, and that means it lost 50% of its size, of its volume. All products shrink. Some of them will actually expand and contract at different rates if it's super hot out or super cold out too. So people who say my primer doesn't shrink or this primer doesn't shrink, they're wrong. All products shrinks. Urethanes typically shrink bad in the world of high fill primers. There's some advantages of urethane. I'm not saying urethanes are bad. In the collision industry, urethane is king. I use urethanes clear coats. I use urethane sealers. In the collision industry, I lean towards urethane primers. In customizing and high-end restoration, I use epoxies for bare metal. I use polyesters for high build. If you didn't like polyesters, you could look into a product like VP 2050, which is a high build epoxy. That's what we recommend. We're not getting paid by PPG or Evercoat to say this. There might be a better way or a different way. This is just what we do. So the next question is can you explain why you're putting your epoxy primer underneath your body filler? And they also wanted to know about cleaners over sandblasted parts. There's nothing wrong with putting body fillers on top of rust-free, properly sanded steel or aluminum. We've done that in this industry for not 100 years, but pretty close. In the collision industry, that's the way they do it. What we were talking about in the videos is super high-end restoration and customizing. And it triggered a lot of people. If you don't do it that way, if you don't want to do it that way, that's fine. But if we're talking about, I'm restoring the car that John F. Kennedy got shot in and I want it to last, 200-300 years, what's the best way? All right, get it to bare metal. If you sandblast it first, the problem with some kinds of media is they leave a weird profile. It almost looks like a teardrop, like a pothole. You should not put wax and grease remover on that because the liquid, the solvent, the water can get trapped inside that profile, and then you put your epoxy primer over it and it can cause it to rust out. But some people like to wax and grease it because of whatever reason. All right, cool. You get it back from the media blaster and you want to wax and grease it, take a DA with 80 grit and or 150 grit, run it over. It will be enough to change the profile. Maybe you had a little flash rust because it's been sitting around for a little bit. And then you can blow it off wax and grease, use your wax and grease remover. That way will work. We do not recommend putting wax and grease or waterborne cleaners on most profiles from the sandblaster or the media blaster. Some work, most do not, so we just say don't do it. I like using, and again, I'm a PPG guy. They're not the only game in town. I like using PPG's Metal Prep and their phosphate metal conversion coatings. If you go to their SX line and their One Choice, there's a great way that shows you how to apply it in a two-step application with red Scotch-Brites, and then you put an epoxy primer over that. Historically, I've used DPLF. We're getting out of the DPLF and we're going to the Dell fleet. I believe the part number is D4921. Don't quote me on that because I'm still in the DPLF era of my life and I'm moving over. But what I like to do is spray 1 or 2 coats. I'm using a 1.4 tip. I'm not trying to get crazy build. I know it's primer, but depending on if I'm going to mud over top of it or not, I'm around 1 mil at the end of the day because I don't want to have 2 or 3 mils because it could fail. With the Dell fleet, you can get a little bit thicker. So that's why I'm not using a primer gun with a 1.8. I like a 1.4. I like it to sit for a couple days. How long? The longer the better. All right, and no, extreme heat is not going to help your epoxy dry. Urethanes, polyesters, a lot of other different types of primers will dry with heat. With epoxy, you just have to wait. How long do I wait? I'd love for you to wait 30 days. I'd wait at least 3 days. All right. So now you got your metal conversion coats, your phosphate coatings underneath it. You got your epoxy up top. You don't have to with the LF, the DPLF, is you actually have up to 7 days where you can just apply your high build primer of choice over top of it. I typically give it a little scuff. What do I mean by that? If I'm going to apply body filler on it, I give it a little 150 grit scuff. I want to make sure I don't burn through, and then I can apply my Evercoat glaze or Bondo or body filler, whatever you want to call it, on top of that. I finish my mud with a 150. If I have any bare metal, I can spot that with a little bit of epoxy. I let that sit for a couple days. I scuff it up, and then I pound on 4 big coats of polyester. I'm using Evercoat Slick Sand. I'm using a 2.2 tip or bigger, 4 big coats. It usually dries, depending on the temperature, it usually dries overnight. I usually start with 80 grit on a hard block, and it removes a lot of material and it flattens it fast. I guide coat it. I repeat that process with 150. I guide coat it. I repeat that process with like a 220 or 240. And I am not going back over it with a urethane primer or a different kind of primer. If I had to reprime, I stay in the Slick Sand polyester family. The only thing I'm doing before paint, I'm getting it to like a 400 to 600 range, depending on if it's solvent or water, a solid, a metallic, or pearl, or whatever. I'm sealing the car with the urethane. I'm basing it. I'll sand my base coat, get a little dirt, little peel out, rebase it, and clear. So that's how we use it. If you want to do the VP 2050, which is like what PPG wants you to do, you would do the same steps. The only thing is you would pound on that VP 2050. I like the product. I really do. The only thing I don't like about VP 2050 is it doesn't fill as much as the polyester. It still fills crazy, and it does sand a little bit harder than the Slick Sand. It's not super bad. I highly recommend you try both, and you let us know. What do you like? Do you like the old school polyfill, or do you like the new school high build epoxy? All right, so here's our next question. Please explain transfer efficiency and why you don't like low-end guns. All right, this is just one person's opinion. I'm a painter, aka refinish technician by trade. I paint all the time. I think by buying a low-end Harbor Freight gun will cost me more money down the road. And here's why. Paint, primer, clear coat, whatever is extremely expensive. Labor is extremely expensive. So my time and my material is super valuable. Let's say I buy a gun and it has 80% transfer efficiency or higher. Just because that HVLP or that RP or whatever is capable of 80% transfer efficiency doesn't mean you are getting 80% transfer efficiency. You could buy a Corvette that's capable of getting 20 miles to the gallon, but if you drive it crazy, it might only get, 12 miles to the gallon. Most of the guns nowadays, modern high-end guns, are capable of 70% transfer efficiency or higher. Most of the old school conventional guns and a lot of these knockoffs from Harbor Freight, they're probably more at the 25 to 50 range. What does that mean? If I buy $1,000 worth of paint and products, if I have my Harbor Freight gun, $250 to $500 is going to hit the car. So $750 to $500 is going to get wasted. If I had the high-end gun, let's say it was a 75% transfer efficiency, $750 would hit the car, and $250 would be wasted. Yes, a high-end gun could cost, let's say, $1,000. A low-end gun could cost $100 or $200 or $300. One, the high-end gun could last you a lifetime if you take care of it. Two, it's going to spray better. It's less likely to break. You can get parts for it. But if you're doing a couple paint jobs, the high-end gun is cheaper because it's going to use less material. It's going to give you less problems. It's going to take less labor. That's my view on it. Even if you paint one car and you go all high-end product, it's not hard to spend $10,000 on product now. Now, can you go out and, buy products for $1,000 or $1,500 or $500? Sure. But do you want to get 25% of that to stick, or would you rather get 75% of that to stick? So again, this is just one person's opinion. You can think what you want, but that's my take on why I don't like Harbor Freight or low-end guns. So here's our next question is, what is a P sheet? I think I started with this a little bit before. It's technically a TDS or a technical data sheet. What kind of information will you find on it? Why do you use it? And I'll also talk about the 15-degree rule, which is not on most P sheets or TDS sheets. All right, let me start off with this one. If you're a beginner, you want to read and follow your technical data sheet like it's the law, like it's the Bible, 100%. Do not deviate from that sheet at all. If it says to mix it 2-to-1 or the pot life is 1 hour or whatever, you want to follow it like it's the law, especially if you're a beginner or intermediate. Now, I know there's a lot of advanced guys that are watching this that says, well, not all P sheets or TDS sheets are correct. You are right. And again, I'll get some hate for this. There is some information on there. If you're a professional painter, you'll believe this. There's some information on there that I will absolutely not follow, and we're going to address that in a later video. But the cool thing about a technical data sheet or a P sheet, it will tell you what hardener to use, what's the pot life. If you're not familiar with some of these terms, is if you're using a 2K product, when I mix the primer or the clear with the catalyst, it's only good for so many minutes or so many hours at a certain temperature. Always look at the technical data sheet, but in most cases, let's say that this product is good for 1 hour at 70 degrees. What you have to understand is something called the 15-degree rule. For every 15 degrees that temperature increases, pot life gets cut in half. What do I mean by that? If you got 1 hour, all right, at 70 degrees, if it's 85 degrees in your booth or your shop, that 1 hour now is down to 30 minutes. If you got an extremely hot day and it's 100 degrees out in your booth or in your shop, that 1 hour now is only good for 15 minutes. The original slick sand was only good for 20 minutes at 70 degrees. If it was an 80-degree day out, you had to mix it, get it in your gun, primer a whole car, and get it out of your gun in 10 minutes or less. That's pretty challenging to do. There's ways around it, but that's basically one of the many reasons why you want to look at a technical data sheet or a P sheet, is they'll say how many coats to apply. Do you go 2, 3, 4? More coats, more products is not always better. On a lot of clears, if you put 5, 6, 7 coats, that's pretty extreme. It will fail. On a lot of primers, especially etches and epoxy, if you put 3, 4, 5 coats on when it's only designed for 1 or 2, it will fail. So follow the technical data sheet for pot life, how many coats, flash time, meaning how many minutes to wait in between coats, and you'll become a better refinish technician with it. All right, here's our next question that we got online. Can you explain a little bit more about blocking clear coat before you color sand and buff? Okay, again, we're talking show cars and restoration. This is not for used car guys. This is not for the collision industry. There's plenty of guys who don't sand and buff. I mean, that's fine. If you're doing used Ford Focuses and Toyotas and stuff, and that's how you roll, more power to you. In the collision world, you want to match the peel. If you're painting a front clip on the car and you're a good collision shop, hopefully on a normal job, you only have 2 or 3 pieces of dirt. Your peel has been matched perfectly. Like typically Jeep Wranglers have a lot of peel, and then let's say like a BMW has less peel. So a collision painter who's good will slick out the BMW, and then they'll peel up the Wrangler a little bit so that the peel matches and you can't tell that the vehicle's been painted. Let's say it's got 2 or 3 pieces of dirt. they'll come in with a little block or a fez tool or whatever, remove those couple pieces of dirt, spot polish it, and they're done. But in the world of high-end restoration and high-end customizing, it is different. What are we doing? We're typically putting down 4 big coats of clear, 4 to 6 mils of clear. I'm getting 1 to 1.5 mils per coat. After it dries, and some people are like, leave it out in the sun for a week or a month or do this or that. You can. I mean, it's not a bad move. Typically, if it's dry, not cured, and it was warm out, I'll wait a day and I'll open it up. What do I mean by that? If I'm doing a high-end show car, I'm typically hard blocking it, wet sanding it, and I'm starting with 600 grit. Yes, I said it, 600 grit. Well, that seems rough. Well, it gets it flat, and it gets it flat fast. No peel, no slight waving from the application of the sealer or base or clear coat. It's laser straight. The cool thing about opening it up first, if you wanted to open it up with 600 and then push it outside or let it sit in your shop or put some kind of light on it to help dry it up, because you broke the surface, it will help speed up in the curing process. You don't have to do it like that, but that's a good trick. So let's say I'm done with my 600. What do? I make sure that car is clean and dry. I typically get all the water off of it, and I even apply a wax and grease remover. I'm not using a wax and grease remover because I'm worried about wax and grease. I'm using the wax and grease remover because I want to get all of the remnants from the sanded clear coat out of the scratches. I'll come in and I'll use a dried powdered guide coat. 3M makes it. We lean towards the Merca because they sell black and white. Black works on most lighter colors. I do a lot of black cars. I like the Merca white. I apply a generous coat of that. Then I jump right to 1,000 grit. Yes, I'm skipping 800. I go hard block 1,000. The reason why I like doing that guide coat trick is I don't over sand or undersand. If I over sand the 600 grit scratches, basically I remove too much material. I waste time. Time is money, but also if I remove too much material on every step along the way, I could punch through my clear coat or not have the recommended film thickness at the end of the day. You typically want 1.5 mils of clear or more, depending on the clear coat, and the P sheet or technical data sheet will say that at the end of the day so you have proper UV protection. But I typically do the dry guide coat. I do 1,000. Then I'll clean it, dry it, wax and grease it, apply the guide coat again, and then I typically do the 1,500. I'm going to a semi-rigid soft block, if you will, with the 1,500. The cool thing about the 1,500 is you can go to your buffing stages right now. You can buff out 1,500. That's not what I'm doing, but you could. What I'm doing is the dry guide coat is dead now. I'm not using dry guide coat after 1,500. I'm using 3M's Trizac system. I'm doing a 3,000 grit. It's designed to go on a Dynabrade, a finish sander, if you will. You can do it that way. We typically do it by hand. All right, it provides a little bit better finish. We go 3,000, 5,000, 8,000. And there is a lot of people out there that says, that's a waste of time, that's a waste of money. Those pieces of paper are $5, $8 a piece. Okay, you're not wrong, but let me show you a little bit different way. I used to think like you, and to a lot of people, you don't need to go over 3,000. But what we have found by doing the 3,000, 5,000, 8,000 is, let's say it takes me 1 hour and $5 to $7 for the 3,000. 1 hour and then the price of material for the 5, and 1 hour for the price of the material and 8. So now I got 3 hours extra in it, and let's say on the high side, $21. All right, 3 hours is a lot of time, especially if you're billing at $100 an hour or more, and $21 is something. What we have found by doing the Trizac, the 3,000, 5,000, and 8,000, is it will take less compound, and the compound that we're using is $150 a gallon. It takes less labor, and labor's expensive, and it looks better. We're using a 3-step system. We're using compound, glaze, and then 3M's Ultra Fina. They're 1, 2, 3. The pads are expensive, labor's expensive, the material's expensive. By investing, let's say in a big car, that 3 hours and that $21 of material, we're saving more than 3 hours in buffing, and we're saving more than the $21 of material, and it looks better. If you don't believe us, that's fine. What I would say to you is if you're trying to do super, super, super high-end stuff, try it both ways and let us know what you think. What base coat are you using and why? Okay, David and I both use different product lines. I use PPG, he uses BASF. David works in the collision industry. Their shop uses solvent. He loves the BASF line. He loves their solvent. He loves their product line. I won't speak for David, but I'll tell you what I use. I use PPG. I use solvent. I use water, and I use single stage because I'm doing collision stuff, I'm doing restoration stuff, and I'm doing custom stuff. In my opinion, I like water for candies and metallics and pearls. If I owned a high-end collision shop, a high-end production shop, I like water. I think it matches better. I think it covers better. It seems like it costs more money. I don't think that that's true. I'm not saying it's cheaper. It covers faster, so it takes less material, and it covers faster, it takes less labor, so I think it equals out. Where do I use the solvent? On a black car, I'm not going to use water. I don't like the way black water looks. It's brown. If I want a black, I'm leaning towards like a DBC 9700, that's PPG solid black solvent, or something from their DCC concept line. Why do I like single stage? I don't like it in every spot. If I use single stage, I might use it on like some chassis parts or some interior parts, or I'll paint an engine with it or a transmission with it. It's great for that. I'm not a huge fan of powder coat. I like single stage over powder coat for many reasons that we can talk about later in life, but I like single stage for that. If I'm putting it on a car body, it is not going to be a metallic candy or pearl. I will only use single stage DCC concept by PPG if it's a solid color. There is a trick that you can take, let's say a clear like 2021, and you can mix your clear coat with your last couple coats of single stage, a 50-50 mix. And so you can have single stage that technically has some clear mixed in it. It gives you a little bit of depth. They call it depth of image, a little bit more protection too. Why do I like that? I love it and I hate it. Black single stage that's cleared, if you put it next to a black waterborne car, the black waterborne car looks brown. It looks gross. If you put a black single stage car, especially if it has clear, next to a solvent car that's black, the single stage car looks blacker and deeper. 9 out of 10 people are never going to notice it, but I don't care about 9 out of 10 people. I care about me and my customers, and I just like single stage because it has that good look. But I'm not one of these guys who, well, I don't paint water, or I don't do that, or I don't do that. I paint them all. And each of them has its advantages and disadvantages, and every car and every budget and every situation is a little bit different. So we got this question a lot. What do you guys do for a living? Are you just an internet influencer? No, we're not internet influencers. We started this podcast in early 2024. David, the guy behind the cameras, he is an automotive refinish technician by trade. He works in a production collision shop. They do high-end repairs at a Ford dealership. He does do restoration and customizing on the side, but his 9 to 5 is a production painter in a high-end collision. I am a painter by trade. I've done this, since I was 18 years old, professionally. I'm 48 now. I teach at a technical school. I've been there 25 years. but I paint and do collision and custom and restoration through my private business and or on the side, if you will. So both of us love cars. We love painting. We don't know it all. We don't have it figured out. We never will. But we wanted to give you real life content and help the next generation out of people who like cars, be it the do-it-yourselfers or the next generation of painters or body techs. So that's why we're doing it. When I say I like PPG or David likes BASF, it's not because BASF or PPG are paying us. And it's not, and maybe I'm wrong. I'm telling you that because in my experiences, this is what I'm comfortable with. This is what I know. This is what I like. This is what I know what uses. You can take the information for as it is, but that's what we do for a living, and we're not internet influencers just yet. We're trying to get this TikTok dance craze thing going up. So you can follow us on TikTok and like and follow. Still working on our steps, so hopefully that takes off. All right, next question is, what is a mill gauge and how do you use it? The mill gauge that I own is about $1,200. I'm not recommending that's the one you buy. We've been buying these cheap ones on Amazon that are right around $100. We'll try to find the link and put it down in the description below. The reason why I like that mill gauge is it's a nice entry level. A mill is 1/1000th of an inch. And in the world of paint and body, we measure everything in mils. So let's say you got an 1/8 inch of Bondo, it's technically 125 mils of Bondo. Typically, most OEM paint jobs are 5 to 7 mils, give or take a little, depending on what we're talking about. And most custom jobs should be probably 21 mils or less. I've seen a lot of cars that were 40, 50, 80, 100 mils. And if you're buying and selling cars or doing body work and you don't have that $100 mill gauge, I think you're doing yourself a huge disservice. I even mill gauge my primer to make sure if I'm going to reprime something, it's 9.9 mils or left, because with slick sand, it's not hard for me to get 15 or 20 mils of product. Well, if I have 15, 20 mils of primer and then I reprime it and then I seal it and base it and clear it, well, now I'm in the danger zone. So I like using a mill gauge. They're very simple to use. The $100 one I recommend because it works on ferrous and non-ferrous metal. It will not work on fiberglass. They do make this mill gauge that's like $25,000 that will work on all substrates, and it will measure and tell you exactly how much mud, exactly how much epoxy, exactly how much base, clear, sealer, everything. But that's unrealistic for most people. It's been a dream of mine to buy a mill gauge like that for a long time. I don't own one of those yet, but I do have a lot of the $100 ones at the school for the students to use. And then my personal mill gauge is about 20 to 25 years old, and it works really well. So I highly recommend checking out some mill gauges and working that in your paint and body. Even if you're a collision guy, I don't think it's a bad way to do it. If you're dealing with insurance companies and something's been painted before and it's got 40 mils and you can mill it and show them, look, we need to strip this, and the insurance company says, we're not paying for that. You say, okay, well, we're not going to warranty this because it's been painted before. It might give you the leverage you need to do a little mini strip or whatever. So I think a mill gauge is a good investment. Here's the next question that's pretty popular is, what grit or grits do you typically paint over? That's a complicated question. It depends on, are you using water? Are you using solvent? Are you using a sealer? Are you using BASF or PPG? Let me talk about in my world with PPG. If I'm sealing something, I could be as rough as 320 wet. Now that's the roughest. And that's a kind of a stretch. I would have to have a solid color sealer in single stage. Now I have painted over 240 white with a sealer, and I didn't have any sand scratches later in life when it shrank, but I don't recommend that. Typically, I think you're going to be the 400 to 600 if you're putting a sealer, a base coat, and a clear coat down. I don't care if it's water or solvent, you're typically going to be that 400 to 600 range. Solid colors, you could probably get away with that 400 to 500. If it's a metallic candy or pearl, I'd probably step it up to maybe a 600. Water typically tends to be a little bit thicker, so you don't need to be as high in some cases. If I'm gonna clear coat something, let's say I'm gonna blow a little color in the door and I'm gonna clear coat the rest of the door, is I'm applying my clear coat over a true 800 grit scratch. So no sealer, no base, just straight clear. You could go as high as 1,000, wet or dry. For the people out there that are sanding with 1,500 or 2,000 grit and clearing over it, it will work. I highly recommend not doing it because you're giving up mechanical adhesion. I prefer to clear over the most aggressive scratch I can get away with that doesn't show sand scratches down the road, and I lean towards 800 personally. Hope that helps. All right, hopefully that answers some of the questions you guys had. Sorry we couldn't answer them all. If you have more questions, you can DM us or just comment. We'll do our best to answer all the questions you guys have. Please try to be respectful. If you say something nasty, we might just overlook it. If you have a question, just ask it, and we'll do our best to give you the information you're looking for. Here's the part everyone's been waiting for, our very first Refinish Media giveaway. So after this, you can watch the end of this to figure out how to win that gun kit. We really want to say thank you. We really appreciate you guys for all the support. David and I spent a lot of time, a lot of money doing this. We're not sponsored, we're not paid. We're doing this for our love of the industry, and hopefully you guys get something out of it. Thank you. Here's the part of the video everyone's been waiting for. Refinish Media's very first giveaway ever. We actually have a DeVilbiss 2-gun kit courtesy of Mark Cartier. This is their starting line. This is their entry-level gun kit, but it includes a HVLP primer gun and an HVLP top coat gun. It also comes with a case, a regulator, and some tools. But they didn't just give us one kit, they gave us 2. So there'll actually be winners on YouTube and Facebook. So how do you enter on Facebook or how do you enter on YouTube? It's pretty simple. The contest will start Sunday, July 21st. It will end Sunday, September 1st, 2024. So you'll have just over a month. Yes, you can enter on Facebook and you can enter on YouTube. If you're related by blood or marriage to David or I, unfortunately, you're ineligible to win anything from us, so you're out. So how do I do it on YouTube? It's simple. You go to YouTube, you search Refinish Media, you find our page, you subscribe, and you like. You go to this video and you just comment Refinish Media. Automatically, you're eligible to win the gun case. Okay, how do I do it on Facebook? Facebook's a little bit more complicated. We unfortunately have 2 different pages on Facebook. One of them was our very first one that has 5,000 friends and over 8,000 followers. Our new Facebook page has no friends and only followers. Find the business page that only has followers, like and follow the new business page, find this video and comment Refinish Media. You're automatically eligible to win the gun like that too. We will put a link in the video below for our YouTube page and our new Facebook page. So these are great guns. David's gonna take them to work next week, tear them down, lube them up, adjust them, and do demos and reviews on both of these guns. So when you guys get them, they'll be all good to go in perfect working order, and we'll have some information and some feedback on them. So good luck. Hopefully there'll be many, many more giveaways in Refinish Media's future. Thanks for the support.